That's what I kind of want to talk about is the dead. The people who are not here. I know I spoke about this on one of my videos. Well, in my last video about another Trainwreck talk. This is another Trainwreck talk, but another thing I want to talk about is the whole concept of just death. Once you're not here, it's the final thing, it's the final sleep and all this. The final sleep. But here I am living to remember the dead. And I know a lot of dead people, you know. And they're not here, but they inspire, you know. I'm still here remembering them, keeping the memory alive. You know, from the stories I tell and all this. Even when you're living, I would tell a story when we're hanging out and I had a couple friends and run-ins of people at bar going, I don't know why I always gotta tell that story every time. I don't know, it's just a good story to talk about because it's a funny story. It's burned into my memory that I seriously, when I was in the hospital back in September, I was thinking this thing about I'm gonna be an old guy. I'm gonna be kind of trapped in a kind of room like this, being old and all this, and all I have is stories of what I remember. And you know, it could be like a dementia, person, you know, with Alzheimer's and all that. You know, just sitting there. I can remember the past just like that, but I can't remember what I did 5 minutes ago. You know, like it kind of made me like an epiphany. You know, and epiphanies happen all the time. Sometimes you gotta catch them. Sometimes those epiphanies kind of catches a deja vu. Which a deja vu sometimes happens to me because sometimes, once in a while, I've dreamt things, and then later down the line, I'm like, it happens exactly how it happened in my dream, and I'm like, holy crap, deja vu, and all this. But it's always to remember things, and sometimes I've actually had like message people that I know about certain things I had like a flashback to, and it's a memory. But sometimes I was conflicted. I was like, is this a memory or is this a dream? So I always like mention like, hey, remember that time we were driving down the van and the van did like a 360, or we kind of like weaved back and forth, but I kept it on the road because some asshole wanted to pass me on fucking on the side while I'm following a snow plow at wintertime, and they kind of like, yeah, that happened. We're in the van, but we didn't do a 360. Like, I know we didn't do a 360, but we could have done a 360. But I kept it on the road, like, bitch, shut up. Okay, heart started to come back. You know, one of those kind of stories, and they clarify, yeah, that happened, but we didn't do a 360. Well, I know we didn't do a 360. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. Sometimes I do that, and that's a sign of people have dementias, they repeat themselves. Or they can have leukemia and have fucking gunked up white blood cells that gunks up the short memory, so it's like a constant brain fart. Like my mom, you know. I go to visit my mom quite a bit, you know, and she has that leukemia that you can live for a long time, she said, because she's a nurse. She tells me clearly, like, the leukemia I have, we can live for a long time as long as we still got treatments to kill off the white blood cells, multiplying and not dying off. So it's constantly brain farts for her. And, you know, my mom tells me something like, oh, did I tell you? Like, you already told me this, Mom. Oh, okay. And then even 5 minutes later, she starts telling me, like, oh, like, yeah, you already told me this, Mom. But I always like when she talks about, like, old times, you know, back when I was a little kid. I remember when you were a little kid. I'm like, oh. And that's what she's going to remember. And I'm going to remember when she's long gone. Well, for not a very long time, you know. But my mom telling me stories about me, but I remember her always telling me stories because it's like the time I got mad one time. She's like, I've never seen you get mad for that. But that one time I got stuck on the ice in the car and I was telling you to push and you were trying to push and I kept saying, push, push. And then you're like jumping on ice going, I am pushing, but I am on ice and there's no grip on my feet. Mom, sorry. And it's just like, it was just how you just said, you're sorry after yelling at me. I'm like, I know, because I was literally trying to push her car off the ice in the driveway, but I cannot get no footing because I am on ice. So here I'm like just pushing against a wall. I'm not going anywhere, you know. But I'm saying always those memories of the people who are gone, you know. So, you know, I remember my grandma Flanders tell me stories like your great, well, your grandpa, and your, maybe, she told me like a story about her uncle or something like that that was in World War I, and he walked like so many miles, and why his feet hurt, and this guy, soldiers, when they had the final rest to stop marching, through territory and all that for World War I, he literally took his shoe off to see why his foot hurt so much. He was mostly in the toe area. Then he noticed when he took his socks off, he was missing his big toe. And he kind of shook the sock, and his big toe fell out of his fucking sock into his hand, and he lost his big toe because they were walking so much that he literally, like, he was so hyped on adrenaline that he didn't realize his toe broke off, and all that broken out toe finally just disconnected the toe because the toe was already broken, and then the toe just like disconnect all that walking, and he's like, oh, my feet are hurting, man, my feet are hurting. I'm missing a big toe, which I cannot remember that person's name because it's my grandmother's story, and I was a little kid when she told me, but I still remember her telling me about war stories in the family, Like, your Grandpa Flanders over here, he never told me, and Grandpa Flanders died in 97, but even she told me, every time until she died in 2007, it's like, your Grandpa Flanders never told me what he did in the war. We would ask him what he did in the war. He said he never would tell us until the week before he died. And he looked at me. We're sitting there watching TV. We're having a good time. And he just kind of looked at me and going, you always ask me what I did in the war, in World War II. And she's like, yeah, but you never want to speak about it. He's like, I want to tell you now. Right there, she said, because she was with that man for so long, she knew he's telling this because he feels like he's going to die, but he wanted to get that off his chest. My job in World War II was to pick up what was the left of the dead bodies after dropping the bomb. Man, talk about... And he's like, and sometimes when you pick up a dead body, it would just disintegrate into ash. And he lived with that until 97 when he died. A week before he died. That's when he told my grandmother the story about the death that he saw after the bomb. And then it's like, man, Grandpa Flanders was... I mean, this man had a missing finger because because he was a carpenter and a car guy. He was a greaser. He was so old greaser that I still hold this. Most people don't know about this, but this bracelet I'm holding, when diamond plate first came out, first diamond plate came out for things, for mechanic, my grandpa Flanders made this bracelet. He cut it out of a sheet metal of diamond plate and made a bracelet out of it. And I still wear this bracelet to this day, and it always makes me think of heritage. I mean, technically he wasn't my grandpa by blood, but he was still my Grandpa Flanders. Because I'm a Gaul, but it's not really my bloodline. I'm supposed to be a Quarters by bloodline. But because my mom did the whole, for 20 years, saying, hey, this guy's your dad, until I said, hey, I don't want to be like him because, the things he did in the past and what he's become, I wish such and such Gaul dad wasn't my dad. And she's like, really? Does you really mean that? I'm like, yes, I really mean that. While I'm driving on icy road, she tells me, well, he ain't your real dad. Age 20, this guy I think about all my life was my dad. Dad. He is my dad. He's the old man. And I found out after 20 years, he wasn't my dad. And it was like, I'm driving on icy road, and I look at my mom like, you could have told me this after I got the gold tattoo when I was like, 2006, when I got it. Couldn't say, hey, I even told you before I got the tattoo, I'm going to get a gold tattoo on my arm. Right there, you could have told me. It's like, well, I was going to let you think he was your dad until what you just said, that you wish he wasn't your dad. So, I'm like, so that's a fun story about me. Anyway, so my stepdad's stepdad, so even though my Grandpa Flanders, even though family is more than just blood. It's who you count as blood, because you're not related to him. This is like, Josh's kid, best friend, sixth grade, and we're band brothers, we're best friends and all this. His son calls me Uncle Alex, even though we're not blood, related. It's just he knows me as Uncle Alex. And he's like, hey, Uncle Alex. Yes, Alex. And all this. So talk about like Grandpa Flanders and being a greaser and World War II vet and pick up dead bodies after that. But it makes me kind of think it's the heritage of life. Life goes from this and that, and we remember, even though I'm not related to them, I still tell stories about them. And right there, I just told stories about my Grandma Flanders and my Grandpa Flanders. People that were not bloodly, not my actual grandparents, but they were my grandparents because they were there when I was growing up. Especially my Grandma Flanders. Until she died in 2007. When Grandpa Flanders died in '97, she went to a retirement home, an Oddfellows retirement home. His number was room number 60. I remember the button. Hey, Grandma Flanders, this is Alex. She buzzed me in. But she always had banquets, little Christmas parties, Thanksgiving party, Halloween parties, Valentine. Even if it was a holiday, these old people had parties for the show. Before, it was always on the weekend because they know how people were. It was the holidays. So sometimes Thanksgiving, I would actually go to Thanksgiving to my grandmother's. And the old people that did not have families still living or want doing with them, they had a little potluck down there in their retirement home down in the main lobby. And I went there until I was 19 years old when she died. And no way. 6 math. No, I was gonna be 19. She died in 07. I turned 20. I was almost 21 when she died. Holy crap. So the math, I was almost 21 when she told me. And yeah, it was one of those kind of like unbelievable things. Like, like I went there because when you got like old-fashioned ladies from the 50s and 60s and the 40s, they were born in the 20s and lived through the 60s and the Great Depression. My grandmother Flanders was so hardcore of not believing in the banks that every weekend when I took her grocery shopping to the day she died, she would go like, we gotta go to the bank. And she said, I like to pull out everything, but not just enough to keep my account open. So pull everything out, but still keep my account open. And they would do that because you can't go see my mom in the bank because she would do that. She would pull out, she would pull out $1,000 every week. Because that's how, she's like, and then when she died, we found some money in the sock. I found it. It was $10,000 in that sock. And then we found another 2 socks that had $20,000. I'm like, looked at my stepdad, right? I'm like, what's up with this? He's like, oh, what do you find at the bottom of this hamper right here? She's like, oh, your grandmother didn't believe in banks. So why do you think she always took all what she needed out of the bank to keep the bank account open every Saturday? I'm like, how do you know that? I was like, well, those couple weekends you had to go play a show, and I had to go take mom to, grocery shopping, and I noticed she was doing it too. And I even asked her, and she's like, well, I grew up in the Great Depression. I don't believe in banks. So when you get your money in your account, take that money as soon as possible. You don't know when it's gonna fucking go down the chute like it did the Great Depression. So she grew up in the Great Depression, and she knew how it was. And then sometimes I still haunt because her Halloween was the best. Always going there and getting my popcorn balls. Popcorn balls about so big, all smashed up with caramel and marshmallows, and just think about a Rice Krispie popcorn ball dipped in orange dye, and it was just delicious. You just couldn't eat one because that's all you could eat one. I mean, you want to eat more, but you're still working on your first one because they were like baseball size, literally. I think it was baseball and just a tad bigger. It's a big, pretty popcorn ball. But now I'm talking about food and all this. And all I wanted to leave it was on death. But as I was saying, there's all these memories we have of people who died and all this. So all this is leave your marker in what you want to do. Because that's all people are going to remember you by. Stories of them, what they remember of you.